Hi, this is Dr. Larry Miller. I'm your instructor in Art 173 photography, and this is the first photographic assignment that we'll do. And I'm going to tell you 10 things that will make you a better photographer, and I guarantee that. First, let me tell you a little bit about my photography. I began getting serious about photography when I was in college. I did get much better at it when I worked at the University of Arkansas, and I also earned a master's in instructional media at that time. I was a media specialist for many years. I learned at a time when we used film, not the digital cameras and processes that we have today. It really is so much cooler now, but a lot of what I learned back then still holds true. I'm a big fan of Flickr. Flickr is a website that is specifically for storing photographs and images, and I encourage all of you to get a Flickr account. There's a free account. You can do plenty with that. I have been doing Flickr for 7 years plus, and I now have over 24,000 images on my Flickr account. One of the things I like about Flickr is that it allows me to see what images are being viewed, and I have had over 1 million views of my photography on Flickr. If you want to look at my stuff, you go to flickr.com/drmillerlg, and it'll take you to my area on Flickr. I encourage you to do that, not because I think I'm a great photographer, but because you'll see a tremendous variety of images. You'll see pretty much how I kind of treat things, at least in terms of the end product. The 10 things that will make you a better photographer came from a blog post that I wrote last year. The first thing I want to tell you is look through your camera. Is your subject better suited to be a horizontal or a vertical image? Horizontal is sometimes called landscape, but a lot of times, particularly if it's a person that's standing up, you would be better off to make it a vertical. The vertical composition is going to fit a vertical subject better than a landscape. Just simply rotate your camera and it'll make your subject more prominent and more natural. So you see the guy in the middle here? If we made that a vertical picture, see how much more prominent and really just more interesting that photograph is. Do you take a horizontal or a vertical? Well, with digital, why not take both? Number 2, move in closer. Standing too far away from your subject is one of the things that I see with amateur photographers a lot. You really need to get in there. You want to make the subject dominant. In this, there's a close-up effect of this. Here's another one. You want to be close. When we look at images, we're used to watching television and computer screens. We want the image to be big and prominent. So be bold. There's a thing called the rule of thirds. It really gets you away from just putting your subject in the dead center of the image space. If you could take your viewfinder and divide it into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, then put your subject close to the intersection of those lines. That's the rule of thirds. And it creates a more interesting photograph. Our human brain actually processes images that are in these sweet spots here. This is the thirds, and this is the thirds horizontally. Let's look at this sequence here. Here's a photograph of a boat on a lake, a sailing boat, and it's centered. Here's one that's actually more along the lines of thirds, but there's a problem here, and that is that the boat is heading in this direction, and this looks funny because there's not room over here for the boat to go. So This is a far better example of the rule of thirds here. And if we go ahead and look at the enhanced version of this photograph, and let me lay the grid on top of it, and you can see that the boat is actually there in the lower left area of the intersection of the thirds. Take lots of photographs. I can just tell you that this is probably the most important thing that you should do. There is no reason to not take many photographs of the same thing. When you have people in the photo, like if you're doing the typical group family shot, you get the group together and they're standing and looking at the camera, go ahead and fire off a bunch of them, because somebody invariably will have their eyes closed, or there's something in the little details that will make one of these the one that you really want to keep. And just get rid of the other ones. What great photography often is that it captures the moment. And you can capture the moment when you take a multitude of photographs at essentially the same time. Some cameras will actually have a fast fire burst mode that lets you just kind of hold down and fire away. I do this a lot. Let me give you an example. Here's a photograph from Snead State graduation a couple years ago. This was the gentleman that was the graduation speaker, and he's a handsome guy. He takes a good photograph, but I fired off several of them, and the one I really like is this one down on the bottom here. I like it because he's most expressive. He's got his hand up. It's just very interesting. Now, what I'm going to show you next is how through software I've taken this photograph and made it even better. And that's part of what this class is going to do. We're going to learn to use photo editing tools so you can take a good photograph to start with, because we did capture the moment here. But through cropping, which is cutting out extraneous areas, and through some enhancement techniques, this is a far better photograph than this one. But if you didn't have the moment captured, it really wouldn't matter. A lot of times when you're in a situation you don't have control over, you're just kind of going to be lucky to get the moment, frankly. So you have to be ready for it. And so in this picture, I just like the warmness of the greeting that these people are extending to each other. I consider that an interesting photograph because of that. Now, I said move in, but I also mean move as in walk around. Don't just stand in one spot and take several photographs. You have to get closer, but you move side to side, look and see what is going on so you can get the best place. If you're going to do a sequence of photographs about an event or something, the more you move around, the more interesting it becomes. Here's 3 photographs that I took. If you go to my Flickr, you'll find there's well over 150 photographs of this great sailing ship, the USS Constellation, which is in Baltimore's harbor. These are examples of how I obviously moved around. I took this photograph from this side. This is the other side. I've got close-ups here, and that's what I'm talking about, is getting around, moving. Do not be a lazy photographer. Be careful about the background. What is behind your subject? Because you may not see it when you take the picture, but then you look at it later and you realize there's a pine tree growing out of their head, or something annoying about the background that just doesn't work. Look for a background that's not as cluttered, and then your subject will really kind of jump out at you or pop. Avoid having the sun or extreme brightness right behind your subject. That's called backlighting, and there are times when you can work with that, and the more you know about how to use your camera, the better you'll do. But a general rule of thumb would be to have the sun behind you. the source of light coming from behind you. Now in this photograph of a heron, it is a pretty extreme close-up of the bird, and because of the settings of my camera, the bird is in focus, but the background is out of focus. That is a great background. Hold your camera steady. The less light you have, the worse this situation will become, and you will get blurry, not very focused photographs. Don't do that. Practice pushing your camera shutter button very smoothly, steady pressure. Don't jab at it. Don't poke at it suddenly. If you're going to shoot in low light, you should consider a camera support like a tripod, or a single leg device is actually called a monopod. And as we move ahead through this class, you're going to learn about your camera and how you can do some things to change camera settings that will help you in situations where you need to have a focused, steady shot. Number 8, shoot at the proper level and angle. If you're taking a photograph where your subject, like a child or a pet, is down there close to the ground, well then bend down. Get down there close. It makes so much more sense to see the photograph from that angle than just standing up looking down. Also, shooting up or down actually has an effect on us, and shooting up, like on this ship, creates a sense of majesty and kind of bigger than life. Whereas if you shoot the other way, down on somebody, it makes them kind of diminutive. I strongly recommend it when you're shooting with people, however, to get at the eye level of the subject. Number 9, use lines, angles, and framing. I'm a big fan of looking and seeing patterns and seeing lines and strong lines, particularly like diagonal lines. So in this photograph, you've got several line elements. You've got the rope, you got this piece, you've got these boards here, and I just find that more of an interesting photograph because of it. You can also use lines to direct your eye to the main subject. So in this case, the arm and the straps here pull us down to where we can see this young lady's face. Sometimes you can use some of the elements of what's around as sort of a frame, and that creates a nice effect. This is kind of a cliche almost, is where you have the building back here and you have the tree framing it here, but it creates this illusion of being three-dimensional, of having depth. As does this trick called the vanishing point. You've got parallel lines that as they go away from you, they get closer together and they create this vanishing point out at the horizon there. Number 10, and this is very, very important. I can help you with general parts of learning to be a better photographer, but the more you know about your camera, the better you're going to be. If you don't know where your user guide or manual is, you can Google it. Just put in the full camera model number. Don't just put in Kodak camera or Kodak Easy Share camera. Put in the number M522, and you're going to find all of the manuals are available online. Now get into it, look at them, read them, practice, try things. That's what you're going to have to do, and that's your obligation as a student in this class, is to learn your camera. In summary, landscape, horizontal, rotate your camera to your advantage. Move in closer, use that rule of thirds. It's not ironclad rule. There are plenty of good photographs that don't follow the rule of thirds, but it's a great thing to do. And sometimes you can try, if you have the luxury of being a digital photographer, you can try multiple things. Try different framings of the same subject and see which one works. Take lots of photos. Lots and lots of photos. Move around, not just in closer, move side to side, see what different backgrounds are available. Watch those backgrounds, don't have trees and poles and things like that growing out of subjects' heads. Hold your camera steady, shoot at the proper level and angle, and look for those lines and angles and interesting framing features. Finally, learn as much as you can about your camera. That's good advice. So if you do these 10 things, you're going to be a better photographer than you are right now. So let's get our cameras and go shooting.